Bradley Stalder, Ryan Reynolds, back with you for another episode of Man versus Machine. The NFL draft just happened this weekend for those who were living under a rock, which is not a lot of you because it was a record amount of people watching the TV, Ryan, because a record amount of people did not want to go to Green Bay and instead preferred the comfort of their own homes to watch the NFL draft.
Yeah. No offense to like the 10,000 residents of Green Bay, like that was a horrendous business decision having this NFL draft take place in that town.
It's a great business decision for the TV viewers, for the TV people, for ABC, ESPN. It was a great business decision for the Green Bay city, but it was not great for the NFL.
It's literally the worst place to have that specific event in the whole league.
And Green Bay got lucky that it didn't snow out everywhere, right, Ryan?
Imagine that. Like if they got because that can happen there too. Late April, a little snow. It's not out of the question at all.
We had snow on April 11th here in Michigan, so it can only get colder here there in Green Bay. But something else cold happened, Ryan. We saw an avalanche of snow. Not real snow, Shedeur Sanders snow. He avalanched down not from just the first round, not the second round, not the third round. I feel like, it was wild. It was wild stuff how the media was covering it. And he gets picked in the 5th round by the Cleveland Browns. There was some chatter that Shedeur Sanders was not going to be a first-round pick. There was strong chatter, and if you were a film guy, you probably saw that he did not have first-round talent necessarily. However, there seem to be other things going on, Ryan. How are you extracting information from the slide of Shedeur Sanders? What is your takeaway? We didn't get to talk between now and then, so I'm interested in hearing what is your take on the Shedeur Sanders situation?
Yeah. As I've said, I've made a lot of money on Shedeur Sanders through the Mojo platform, good chunk of money. So I've really paid attention to him. Even in the beginning, I thought he was a 2nd-round pick. I think Jackson Dart's like a 2nd, 3rd-round talent too. It seems like the rumors, there's a lot of them essentially that they don't like the drama, the comparisons from guys like what's the college dude's name? I forget his name, but comparing him to. No. The announcer, Klatt, I think, comparing him to Kaepernick and Tebow, that's and Cam Newton as a backup. It's just when you're not good enough to be a slam dunk starter, dealing with the drama and the off field stuff is, and by off field stuff, I just mean the dude's an egomaniac essentially. So
right.
That said, him going to Cleveland's fascinating because 1, he's actually a pretty good system fit, and 2, they have the equivalent of the Raiders quarterback room last year, where it's kind of obviously the worst quarterback room there is in the league. Dylan Gabriel does nothing for me. Kenny Pickett's beatable. Joe Flacco would actually be a borderline perfect mentor for Sanders. So I could see them, especially because they're probably going to be bad because of their quarterback situation. It wouldn't surprise me if he actually saw a little time there this year.
I don't hate the take. I actually love the take. I think that Sanders does play some as well. I have him projected as a part-time player. He's my quarterback 33 in the projections. I don't hate that. He's going to rotate. I think it becomes a Kenny Pickett to start, and then Kenny Pickett flames out a little bit. And then you get Joe Flacco to Band-Aid, to mentor. And then you probably see 4 to 6 games of Shedeur Sanders at the end of the season. They want to know if they got something in Sanders. Maybe you throw in a little bit of Dylan Gabriel just for kicks, because he's good guy Gabe. But the Sanders was mocked consistently ahead of Gabriel, and Gabriel was consistently mocked as a day 3 pick. So this was a surprise. Gabriel moves up, Sanders moves down. But you don't throw 37 touchdowns at Colorado on your own. This is definitely a team where Jerry Jeudy becomes interesting. Yeah, especially if Flacco is the quarterback, he survives, that situation. And the Browns you mentioned could be very bad and in game scripts where they're going to be throwing a lot. So Sanders is interesting. He's not super mobile, but he can move around the pocket a little bit. And look, are you taking shots on like a Shedeur Sanders or like a Jalen Milroe? Like, give me Shedeur Sanders as a better chance to get more games in than Milroe this year.
Yeah, unless Seattle falls out of it. I mean, here's the other thing too. Like, there's rumors that this was an ownership-driven pick.
Right.
If the Browns are 3-7, just because they have terrible quarterback play,
right,
the owner's going to want Sanders because Sanders is interesting.
mm-hmm.
And I don't think the Dylan Gabriel thing is just, I'm almost like pretending that didn't even happen. And it's not that I think Sanders is a great player. I just think I think he's fairly NFL ready. He makes sense in that offense. And like I said,
right.
towards the end of the year, he's noteworthy. I could see the owner kind of be like, hey, listen, let's see what we have in this kid, if anything. So we'll see what happens.
Now the Browns drafted Shedeur Sanders, but they did not draft Travis Hunter because they traded out of the number 2 pick, Ryan. They do get the Jacksonville Jaguars first round pick for next year. They did they got some other picks as well, blah, blah, blah. They moved down to 5. They drafted defensive tackle out of Michigan at that 5th spot. But Travis Hunter now goes to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Before we get into the Jags itself, I mentioned Jerry Jeudy as a big winner. I don't know if there was a bigger winner from the wide receiver rooms across the NFL than Jerry Jeudy. Like, this was a guy that I had projected at a 25% target share. He could probably get more.
I like that. I'm trying to think if there is anyone that benefited more, and I think you're right. I think that's a great call. And again, they have pocket passers too, so they have to throw the ball. They don't have dynamic athletes. I dig it. I like it.
Well, Travis Hunter does go to Jacksonville, number 2 pick overall. Jacksonville does give up a first round next year, but to pair with Trevor Lawrence and alongside Brian Thomas, it's clear that the GM Gladstone loves Travis Hunter. He views him as the generational prospect that he should have been valued at, right? Yeah. This is a player that if you've been following this podcast for some time, we've talked about how Travis Hunter is this unicorn prospect, cornerback, wide receiver, and Jacksonville plans to primarily make him play wide receiver, although they're also going to have him do some cornerback things. And that makes him very interesting. Right now, I'm in some dynasty drafts, Ryan, and some of these leagues are IDP leagues. They're defensive player leagues. For those who are not familiar, the listeners and viewers, IDP gives you defensive points, and you also get the Travis Hunter wide receiver points. So, some of these projections put Travis Hunter, because he can get defensive player points, and everything's a projection at this stage in the game. It's April 30th right now. But some of these leagues are projecting Travis Hunter as a top 7 wide receiver at the position because you also include defensive player points. And if you have the ability to get a top 7 wide receiver in year 1 in any dynasty league, I'm trading up to try to get that 101, especially in IDP leagues.
Yeah, I think even in the short term, long term, whatever you want to frame it, first, it's great that Cohen wants to, he views him primarily as a wide receiver, but the logistics of him playing both sides of the ball, how's he going to be in meetings for both sides of the ball? That's how that pans out is going to be fascinating. I don't think they would have taken, they definitely wouldn't have traded up for him unless they basically told him their plan and he was okay with it, I would think, in their meetings. But yeah, that's unprecedented, especially for a young rookie. But in terms of him, I don't think there's a better realistic land spot than Jacksonville, because you have Lawrence is underwhelmed compared to what was expected of him, but he's an NFL caliber quarterback. He wasn't really going to get that without the other teams at the top of the draft, so I think he's a pretty big winner here.
Yeah, Hunter, he's going to feed families for fantasy. Right now, I have him without the IDP points. I have him projected at wide receiver 27. In the same range as DK Metcalf, Jordan Addison, Chris Olave, Zay Flowers, Devonta Smith, in that range of players just in year one and alongside Brian Thomas. So there's still questions of whether or not this Jaguars team will translate into something that is very good. But having Brian Thomas, who had a massive rookie season, a competent quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. Like, Lawrence is not going to be the Joe Burrow. I don't think I think that's a 95th percentile outcome is a Joe Burrow season for Trevor Lawrence, but he could be a better Jared Goff.
Yeah. I like that.
He could be a better Jared Goff.
He could be like 6th, 7th, 8th in the league in passing yards,
right?
Which would be great for. And the other thing I really like about this situation is Hunter and Thomas have complementary skill sets, so it's a fascinating thing going on in Jacksonville.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And there's no Evan Ingram, there's no Christian Kirk, there's no, Gabe Davis is an afterthought. Literally, if you listen to the Coach Speak Index, the coaches don't even mention that Gabriel Davis exists on the team, and he definitely does.
I'd ignore his existence too if I was going.
It's De'Ami Brown season. It's De'Ami Brown season. Look, it's going to be this consolidated target share with Brian Thomas, Travis Hunter. And look, I feel like wide receiver 27 is even too low. I don't know.
Out of that group, I think I'd bet on his upside out of just about everyone in that cluster. And like, there's some good names in that cluster you mentioned.
Yeah. So I'm excited. I'm excited. If those who are asking, Bradley, how'd you get all these projections out? Well, what am I to do? While sitting at the beach in Tampa Bay, watching the NFL draft and podcasting for like 20 hours straight. You just plug in projections and make it happen. So yeah, Travis Hunter is a massive value. What round would you take Travis Hunter in, like a best ball, Ryan? Like round 6, round 5? Is that too low? Is that right?
No, I think just because, again, we're trying to win tournaments. I think that's right around their area. I was thinking ideally in the 6th, but if I'd probably try to be even on him if he's going in the 5th.
Okay. Fair. And if it increases, I do want to stay with market on Travis Hunter. I think that's the move, especially because I don't think his ADP is going to get so inflated because he does have Brian Thomas there.
Yeah, agreed.
So let's keep her moving, Ryan. We've got a couple more. We're doing rookie talk. We've got Cam Ward off the board, number 1 to the Tennessee Titans. Ooh, well, I mean, the Titans didn't have much. They had Calvin Ridley, as their wide receiver 1. So, and Treylon Burks as their wide receiver 5. Cam Ward's 5th favorite wide receiver in the NFL, Treylon Burks. But you think about like what other players are now on this team post draft. It's Tyler Lockett, who signed as a free agent. It's Alec Aomaner, who was drafted in the 5th round. You got DK in the 4th round. Xavier Restrepo signed as a UDFA. Like, they at least threw some draft capital at wide receivers and gave him something. But I'm not convinced that it's enough, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I don't really have any kind of strong take for you there, pal. Unfortunately.
It could be disastrous for Cam Ward. Let me pull up the projections for quarterbacks and just tell you guys where I have him ranked, because it is probably not going to be pretty. The reality is that Cam Ward, I have just ahead of Mason Rudolph, Sam Darnold, Russell Wilson. So he's my quarterback 24 right now in the projections. Not looking too pretty.
Yeah, they have him in the relative cluster. Like, they have him around Stafford, Penix. I think I'd actually rather have Ward than Penix. I think Ward has better rushing upside. I'd rather have Ward than Geno Smith. I'd definitely rather have Ward than Sam Darnold. That's, it's not like last year where there was like quarterbacks with enormous upside late in the drafts. I think he's fine. I think he's your quarterback too in certain builds. It's
possible. I have a pre-NFL draft build with Jaden Daniels and Cam Ward, and those are my only 2 quarterbacks. So
that's yes, as many times as possible.
You're like, it's something, Bradley. It's something. Last player before we head to the break, Ashton Genty goes off the board to the Raiders. Speaking of the Raiders, I'm a little bit more bullish on the Raiders than Ryan was earlier suggesting. Poo-pooing Geno Smith. Get out of here, Ryan.
Yeah, I hate Geno Smith. Oh, I can't wait till he's gone.
Genty comes into my projections as the RB4 in projected fantasy points, just a sniff ahead of Devon Achane and ahead of Christian McCaffrey, only behind Gibbs, Robinson, Barkley. Is that the right order? I've seen other analysts have Ashton Genty as the RB3, as the RB5. I mean, obviously we're splitting hairs at this point, but like, is there an argument to be made that someone else other than Gibbs, Robinson, Barkley should be drafted ahead of Ashton Genty?
No, I think he's fourth. I think anything beyond that, because again, like with Bijan Robinson, you have a level of safety. We know we're going to get. Gibbs, same thing. You know, I do think Genty's probably like most relevant comp to who's in the league right now is Bijan, but again, like that's, I don't know. I don't have a ton of enthusiasm with that offense. So the one thing that I like though is that division could at least, push some scores, push some overs this year, potentially.
What I like about it is that Geno Smith, with all his flaws, is an accurate quarterback. He will get the ball to his guys. And for shorter passes to a player like Ashton Genty, the Raiders didn't address the wide receiver position in a meaningful way. If you say that Batch, however you pronounce his name, is the answer at wide receiver 2 behind Jacoby Myers, I think you're fooling yourself. So they didn't bring in a touchdown maker. They didn't draft Tet McMillan. They didn't go after, target hogs or trade up for an Igbuka or anything like that. They don't have another wide receiver that's going to step into that role. That means it probably is more for Brock Bowers or a good amount of Brock Bowers. But Ashton Genty, I think, will catch a lot of passes out of the backfield. I projected a 12% target share for Genty. In the same lines as Gibbs, just a hair below ahead of McCaffrey. Same line as like Breece Hall, like very much a pass catching back out of the backfield. Thoughts?
Yeah, the one pushback I'd give is Smith's a bit of a mobile quarterback, so that might hurt that a little. He's definitely not as talented as Gibbs,
sure,
as a pass catcher, but yeah, he's good volume guy. What do the Seattle runners have like pass catch? I know Walker was never a receiver, but did Charbonnet ever have like enough noteworthy target volume to say like, okay, Geno Smith checks down? Because just playing back, watching him play over the last few years, like I don't really view him as like a check down quarterback.
Yeah,
at least not the running backs.
Both Charbonnet and Walker last year had at least 8% target shares. So, I mean, they were splitting the backfield too, and that, I mean, look,
yeah,
some of that is inflated by the fact that Charbonnet stepped into a full-time role. Once Walker went out for a bit because Walker missed a few games last year. So I would anticipate that it's going to be like 11, 12, 13% for Ashton Genty.
I think that's fair.
All right. Well, we're going to talk more about Amarian Hampton, how to handle Travion Henderson and his teammate, Quinshon Judkins for the Green Bay Packers. But first, a word about the FFPC.
Hey, why do we partner with the FFPC? Because they have the widest variety of fantasy football formats, and it's the easiest place to find all types of fantasy football contests in the world. What if you want to play for high stakes? Well, they have a $6 million prize pool with their Fantasy Players Championship. They also have way too early best ball leagues that start in February and Dynasty leagues. They have the closest thing to a liquid market for orphans that there is in all of Dynasty. And the FFPC has sponsored us for half a decade because we are actually delivering information that can help fantasy gamers, and they're generating so much interest into bringing in so many new users, casual users even. The FFPC creates a unique experience where you can both compete against the best and make money. Use promo code UNDERWORLD to get $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team at the FFPC with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go get it!
That's right. Go get it at FFPC. We've got some running backs to talk about, Ryan. There were only 2 backs taken in the first round. Ashton Genty, Omarion Hampton goes to the Los Angeles Chargers, and he's very interesting. This is the Harbaugh guy, first round pick. We know Harbaugh loves to run the snot out of the ball, and he also signed Najee Harris this offseason. So short term, we can imagine that Harris gets a lot of between the tackles work, that he gets the grinder work, that he handles a significant amount of carries. Hampton handled a lot of pass catching in college. However, I view this as a Detroit Lions, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs scenario where you have a Thunder, you have a Lightning, you have guys who are going to split carries. It's going to be not as frustrating for fantasy as maybe some analysts will make it, because this is going to be a good offense. Harbaugh is going to run an efficient offense. They're going to score points. They're in a division where they'll get into shootouts. Herbert can get the ball down the field to his guys. And Hampton's going to be a big part of that, not only for the short term, but in dynasty leagues, the 103, 102, 104. It depends on your preference, but I don't see him falling outside the top 4 of dynasty picks.
Yeah, like we talked about before the draft, I'm not super crazy about Omari and Hampton, because I see other backs have a better chance to like create yards on their own. But the beauty of this landing spot is not only is it Harbaugh's offensive philosophy, it's you have an elite offensive line, you have a quarterback that teams aren't going to load the box on you. It's the perfect environment for him. Long term, like you said, like he's a slam dunk. I love it. I can't compare him to Gibbs skill set wise, but I could see it usage wise where he takes kind of a secondary role early and then that grows as the season goes on. But if Najee Harris was in there, like I would be so overweight in Hampton, it would be crazy. But now I'm going to probably have to force it just for that late. I think late in the year, especially if you're like in a home league, he's a guy where if his usage is short in the beginning of the year, I'm going to go out of my way to trade for him as often as I can.
So right now I have Omarion Hampton projected as my running back 24. I feel like that's fair. I feel like that is a fair median projection for Hampton, given that Najee Harris, where does Harris fall in here? Najee Harris falls into the running back 35. I think the pass catching plays more of a role in there. Najee Harris was forced to be more of a pass catcher in Pittsburgh last year when Jaylen Warren was out for numerous games and was recovering slowly. So Harris was forced into catching the ball, but that's not his profile. That's not what he's known for. That's not the strength of his skill set, is pass catching. So I think they do use Hampton more in that third down role, and then also spilling Harris for a bit. But you talked about it. Maybe Hampton does take over the backfield near the end of the season because he's just more electric. He's more fun. You can imagine Harbaugh, who does like to rotate in his backs, like Edwards and Corum, and back in the days of the U of M, University of Michigan running backs. So I could see Hampton being more of the upside play and Najee Harris being the more like annoying, get 14 for 65 and a touchdown. And that's going to be
Ray ruins everything for everyone.
Right. Yeah. Gets plenty of touches.
I think the backfield I'd comp it to is Harris is Ezekiel Elliott and Hampton's Pollard, at least for this year. Long term, I think it's like next year, he might be a first round pick, but I think that's what we're looking at this year is Elliott and Pollard essentially.
Love it. So 24th for Hampton. Henderson, drafted in the second round, running back out of Ohio State. I have projected at RB 27, so only a couple spots behind Hampton, and it's within a touchdown. Like one touchdown falls a guy's way or not, then they leapfrog each other. They're in that same cluster. So, Travion Henderson goes to the New England Patriots. We know who's there already, and it's Ramondre Stevenson, who carried the rock consistently for New England last year. So consistently, in fact, he was told that he was going to be benched and instead started the game. So maybe that's a fault of the coaching staff, but Ramondre was extended, last off season. He did have his fumbling issues, but hopefully Henderson can bring more than just the running, but also the pass catching. And that's why I think he doesn't fall much further below Amari and Hampton. But I do believe Stevenson is mixed in significantly there.
Yeah, new coaching staff, which gives us an added wrinkle. I love Henderson again. In long term, I think it's fascinating because Drake May is a player. With Josh McDaniels there, Henderson's a very good blocker. He's a better blocker than Hampton. So I actually think he has a better shot to see third down work. But again, May's a bit mobile, so I don't know what kind of a passing game volume that results in for Henderson. But Henderson, I don't think the Chargers are going to just not play Najee Harris as the year goes on. I just think Hampton might cut into his workload in the second half of the season. I could see Henderson outright supplanting Stevenson. I think Stevenson's, I've never been a Stevenson guy. New coaching regime where they're probably not happy that he was extended, I would think. So we'll see what happens. Again, though, it does cloud it. The floor is definitely lower because Steven's a veteran and they still don't have a great offensive line in New England. So you're going to want the veteran early in the year, especially.
Yeah, this feels gross. New England Patriots, yes, they did draft Kyle Williams and they did draft Travion Henderson, but I don't think that was enough, Ryan. This was my concern. I was on a Dynasty podcast a couple weeks ago before the draft, and I got into a debate about Drake May. Drake May as a Dynasty asset, a player who long-term people are drafting very early, like round 2, round 3 in their Dynasty Superflex drafts. And I don't see it. I don't see a pathway in New England where the Patriots are suddenly elevated by Drake May, elevated by the coaching staff, elevated by what is the pathway for success for Drake May? I don't see it.
This year, I don't really either. I'm not one of those people that think, I think New England's going to be sneaky dangerous to Buffalo. I don't think so. Vrabel's a great coach. The defense is going to be better. It's going to be like a Belichick era defense in terms of squeezing every drop of juice out of the lemon. But like you said, offensively, Stephon Diggs washed, Mario Douglas role player, Kyle Williams again maybe he'll be a contributor long term, but he's basically on his own, Drake May, apart from his running back room. So I'm with you on that. I think it's the one caveat being that he does have to carry the load. He could have I don't want to say this because it's not a 1-for-1, but when Justin Fields had big games, he basically put the offense on his back. He's not as fast as Justin Fields, but I do like his spike game potential. But week to week, he's probably going to be pretty inconsistent for fantasy.
Week to week inconsistency. Drake May, the offense isn't there. It's going to take more dominoes to fall in future years. Yeah. And even then you're at the point in your leagues where you're like, well, is Drake May helping me or hurting me?
I like that. Do. I don't think they're close. I still think they have one of the worst rosters in the league. So I'm with you on that.
Yikes. Well, a player I am much more bullish on, Ryan, is Quinshon Judkins, drafted by the Cleveland Browns. This is a player who's going to handle the majority of the work. He is an absolute beast. This was the outside of Ashton Genty getting the spot in the Raiders. I don't think there was a better landing spot. Quinshon Judkins will feast in Cleveland with Stefanski. He is Nick Chubb 2.0. This was the landing spot for a player like him, where we've seen Chubb for years and years and years under Stefanski just thrive as long as he was healthy. And who's behind him? It's Jerome Ford. It's Dylan Sampson. Judkins is going to step in. If it's not week 1, it's going to be week 3. And he's going to handle the majority of the load. I projected him for 56% of the rush share on the season, 237 rush attempts, over 1,000 yards. And he is, as wild as it sounds, ahead of Jonathan Taylor in my projections. So there you go.
No, for this year, yeah, he couldn't have landed in a better spot for fantasy because, like you said, the running back room's thin. I'm gonna call him Chubb light. He similar skill set. He's not as good as Chubb though. Like Chubb
No.
was, I loved similar draft capital, but I loved Chubb coming out of college. I liked Judkins, but like you said, he's going where David Montgomery is in between Caleb Johnson and David Montgomery on underdog. Like I'm gonna take Judkins over those two guys every time at this juncture.
And you know what? In a close third is Caleb Johnson. You mentioned Johnson being the guy that's close by. I have Caleb Johnson ahead of Tony Pollard, or right next to Tony Pollard, running back 22. So if I'm ranking these running backs and based on the projections, it goes Quinshon Judkins, it goes Caleb Johnson, Amarian Hampton, and then Travion Henderson. Disagree with that order, Ryan?
No, I didn't. Say that again. Say the order again.
Judkins, Johnson, Hampton, Henderson.
I think I'd have Johnson last. Like I think from a volume standpoint, I think you might be, because like we talked about, I said last week, I think he could be 90% Najee Harris. He's just not as good of a player as any of those guys, and I still think they're going to get significant work. And I don't really view the Steelers' offensive line as a premium group, so I don't think it's crazy, but I would have it the traditional way out of that group.
Yeah, a little behind Henderson is RJ Harvey in the projections. Harvey goes round 2 to the Denver Broncos, and maybe, I'm just not as high on like Denver, but the reality is that Sean Payton loves to use multiple backs and he loves to rotate through. And yes, he went out of his way. They drafted Harvey in round 2, so significant draft capital. But Audric Estime isn't going to disappear. Like Jaleel McLaughlin's still going to get 20% of the snaps, 25% of the snaps. I think Harvey pops into that Javonte Williams role, maybe a little bit more than what Javonte got last year in terms of volume, which is good for, fantasy for the pass catching. Maybe I'm a little low on the projections for pass catching. And maybe it's my Notre Dame bias with Audric Estime still there too and not being given a fair shake last year. But RJ Harvey, I have just a couple spots below Kenneth Walker and ahead of Najee Harris.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, again, like the only reason I think anyone cares Harvey even exists is because this is a very ambiguous backfield, and they do have a good line and a good coach that leans into the running game. I think Harvey's a guy who can definitely get you hurt if you're overweight on him. Because I'm with you. I think all three of these guys are going to play. I now realize why like Audric Estime's name came up so often last year is because of the Notre Dame thing. I didn't make that connection. That said, like for me, I'm going to actually buy. I didn't buy Estime at all last year. I'm going to buy him this year. I'm going to buy all three of these guys to a degree. Definitely the cheaper options. And again, like I love McLaughlin as a player. I just don't know if he'll ever get the volume to matter in fantasy, but I'm with you. I think all three of these guys essentially split the backfield between.
What if Audric Estime is last year's Chase Brown?
I think last year's Tank Bigsby is probably where I'm thinking. But like Chase Brown, that I didn't even think of Chase Brown. That would be great, and I don't think that's out of the question because again, like RJ Harvey's not Genty, he's not Hampton, he's not Henderson. He was probably overdrafted a touch even. So We'll see what happens. Like I can tell you right now, like I'll text you in like July with my Estime exposure, and you're going to be like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting."
Let's go. Ryan's going to rival me in Audric Estime exposure.
I might.
There we go. You love to see it. A running back who also got an interesting spot is Cam Scatterbo. Now he joins the New York Giants, your boys, the boys in blue in New York. Well, technically Jersey, but Tyrone Tracy is also a candidate to be like this year's Chase Brown, only the offense isn't as good. He was a 5th-round pick, second-year player, got sprinkled in during the first year, showed some flashes in terms of efficiency, but now can take the next step. I'm just concerned that Tracy is limited by the organization, by the environment, by all the things. Like they bring in a Scatabo. It's not like the Cincinnati Bengals brought in. They brought in Zach Moss, but Zach Moss dealt with injury, and he was actually starting to fade away before that neck injury. And now Scatabo is here. I think this is a slightly different situation. And Scatabo has the chance to work 50-50, win this backfield. Like I still think it goes to Tracy. That's how my projections are with this. But Scatabo is going to be involved. 4th round draft capital on a team that needs playmakers, and Scatabo was that guy in college.
Yeah, I kind of see this similar to Denver. I think Tracy, Singletary, and Scatabo are going to get time. The thing with Scatabo is like he is such a good player. I mentioned this last week. It's just his acceleration and his speed. I don't know how that's going to translate to the NFL, especially with a team with a mediocre at best offensive line. That's my concern with him. But like everything else, like a buddy of mine said, he's like, he reminds me of Emmitt Smith, and like I didn't really balk at it. He's just like so fundamentally sound. He's very shifty. But like you said, he's a significant enough talent, especially given how productive he was in college, where like that's not exactly a vote of confidence in Tracy's our guy.
Right.
I could see that being a messier backfield than people expect as well.
It's at least a hedge from the Giants. It feels like it was a hedge.
Yes. Yeah.
That Tyrone Tracy's probably our guy, but maybe he's not. I don't know. It's like the girl you're texting. I wouldn't know. I've been married for almost 10 years, but it's the girl you're texting. You're like, do we want to go on the date? I don't know if we want to go on the date. Whatever. Throwing it back almost 15 years since, I don't know. It's been a while. Anyways, since a first date, Nevertheless, Tracy is my running back 23 right now, and Scatabo is running back 34. So there is distance between those two, but I still think Scatabo gets some volume.
Especially late.
All right, Tet McMillan goes off the board to the Carolina Panthers. A bit of a surprise. There were some mockers who had Tet falling out of round 1, which I felt was like I felt uneasy about. Still interesting to discuss, but McMillan, I have projected in a similar range as like Devonta Smith, George Pickens, Michael Pittman Jr., Chris Godwin, Khalil Shakir, Xavier Worthy, like Tet McMillan. And that maybe feels a little low, but I don't know how much confidence I can have for Tet being the guy for Carolina.
Yeah, when we did our mock, I mocked him to Carolina. This is actually one of those things, like the people mocking him out of the first round. I'd like you to DM me the names just so I can ignore them going forward. Like that's a little rough, but I don't think Godwin's a good one. Like I think his best case scenario is like Godwin's resurgence, where like he's not gonna blow the doors off people, but if he caught 6 short to intermediate passes a game, I could see that, especially if Adam Thielen either drops off or gets hurt. I could see him ascending, but like you said, I'd have him at the front of the cluster you have there. He looks like he's going a little high on underdog for me right now. Where like, am I going to take Travis Hunter, McMillan? I'm going to take Travis Hunter. Am I going to take DK Metcalf or McMillan? I'm going to take DK Metcalf. So I'm with you on that front.
Yeah, it feels like he needs to be a little bit lower. Calvin Ridley or Tet McMillan?
I would take Calvin Ridley.
I would also, and that's not just because I'm a Calvin Ridley truther.
Stan. Yeah.
Mika Egbuka gets in a tough landing spot, Ryan. Like, at least on the surface, it feels like it's a tough landing spot. You have Chris Godwin, who's there for 2 more years. He's recovering from his injury that's going to cost him probably a couple games. If you're reading the tea leaves right now, it's April 30th. There's a lot of green grass between now and the start of the season. But if I'm reading the tea leaves, the GM Licht came out today and said that I'm not gonna get the exact quote, but essentially Egbuka may get some work early in the season. That is a signal to me that Godwin is not going to be ready for week 1. which is part of those projections. But it also may create a scenario where Egbuka is just too good to get off the field.
The thing that I like about him, like, again, we talk about range of outcomes. There's this, I won't even call it narrow path. And that path is, let's find out how old Mike Evans is exactly. I think he's 32, but I don't want to give bad information. So he'll be 32 in August. Say 32-year-old Mike Evans finally drops off a little bit. Let's say Chris Godwin enters the year, and like you said, he misses the first few games. It takes him a little while to get on track, a la like TJ Hawkinson last year. Let's say his path is like that. That's a smash for Egbuka. That's where, like, we're in business. But otherwise, like you said, late in the year, especially with Evans, Godwin, if Evans is still Evans, Godwin only misses between no time and only a game or two, then, like, maybe this is a thing where it's next year or the year after. But I do think there's a path where he could end up being their top receiver for a while.
Yeah, we saw Jalen McMillan be the top receiver for the Bucs for some time. We saw Cade Otton be the top receiver for the Buccaneers. If anything, the player that most benefits from Egbuka is Baker Mayfield. And Ryan Reynolds was poo-pooing Baker Mayfield pre-draft.
Well, let's be fair. I don't think Baker Mayfield's like Joe Burrow. I was a Baker Mayfield hater for a while. I've embraced, like, he was the reason Tampa Bay was a relevant team last year. So,
Baker Mayfield comfortably my quarterback. Oh, not comfortably. He is tied as the quarterback 5 for me in the projections. So not so comfortable.
That's high for me, but I don't think it's insane anymore either.
Yeah, with all those weapons. Oh, I still haven't added
good old line too.
They do. They have a good O-line, and their defense is occasionally has some holes, but they also can play like out of their minds at times as well. This is a very interesting situation. Elijah Moore, if you didn't hear, did sign with the Buffalo Bills. So I need to update that in the projections.
Former Jet and former Brown Elijah Moore?
Yes, former Jet, former Brown Elijah Moore goes to the Buffalo Bills on a 1-year deal. Last year, Elijah Moore has 17.6% target share and got 1 rush. So there we go. We'll see if that bumps up our beloved Josh Allen. I think it would put him ahead of Baker Mayfield officially in the rankings. You're like, Bradley, he's maybe, yeah.
Anyway, I think he could play there. I think he could. He's not going to be like a difference making asset, but like he's better than Mac Hollins, or at least he's more dangerous than Mac Hollins.
Yes. Do you remember end of rookie year Elijah Moore, Ryan?
Yeah.
Oh, what could have been?
Yeah. I want a showdown slate in the game that he went nuts against the Colts. I think it was the Colts. So
yes,
I have a soft spot for him.
Well, a player I'm forced to have a soft spot for is Matthew Golden, Green Bay Packers wide receiver in the first round. This is interesting that Egbuka went ahead of Matthew Golden when Golden ran the fastest 40. It seemed like he was just very dynamic, but with Christian Watson expected to miss most of, if not all of, the 2025 season, then the concern is that they won't have a field stretcher. They won't have a speed guy to take on that Christian Watson role. And so they needed to address it. And Mecole Hardman is not the answer at speed wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers.
No. He probably doesn't make the team now. No, I mean, this is one of those things where I hate it for fantasy just because if Jaden Reed's not commanding big volume, Matthew Golden's not a volume hound. But from a football standpoint, like, he makes sense. And then say, like, if they make the playoffs and Watson returns late, then all of a sudden they have a fascinating perimeter duo that can march out. So, like, it for football purposes, hate it for fantasy.
Oh, yeah. I'm fading Golden into oblivion for fantasy. Like, For best ball, I'll draft some Matthew Golden. I think he has some spike weeks. We saw that with Christian Watson last year. He had multiple 100-yard games, and I think that Matthew Golden is better than Christian Watson from like an upside perspective, staying on the field perspective. Like he's
yes.
he's better. Watson has just been like, he'll boom bust. So that's a reality.
He's missed a lot of time.
And unfortunately, it wasn't the hamstrings this time. It's also the scheme. Like, you think about what role, and I know that the Packers hadn't drafted a wide receiver in the first round since Javon Walker, but you get to the point where this is how LaFleur wants to run his team. He wants to have role players. You have a Jaden Reed, which is why I faded Reed into oblivion last year and printed money by fading Jaden Reed. The reality is that there are so many different roles on this Packers team. And if you identify who those players are that fill in the roles, you can win. But many people are saying, oh, Matthew Golden's going to step in and be the target hog, the wide receiver one. If anything, like, what are the odds that happens? I will take the bet against it, Ryan.
Same. Yeah, I mean, they have, Dobbs is your contested catch player, Golden's your speedster, Reed is your short area quickness player. So, like, they have, like you said, they're putting people in specific roles, but they're not trying to feed volume to any one of these guys. So, I think, like, in any kind of season-long format, I might fade all of them. Honestly, I might fade all.
I don't hate that.
I might fade the whole team, actually, in season-long.
I'll take some late stabs on, like, Marshawn Lloyd.
Yeah, him.
That might be Tank Bigsby 2.0 as well.
Yeah, it could.
Maybe. Just maybe. Let's keep her moving. We've got a couple more rookies. Jaden Higgins goes off the board in the second round to the Houston Texans. The Texans needed some wide receiver help, with Tank Dell expected to miss most of the 2025 season, with Stephon Diggs now gone. Yes, they bring in Christian Kirk, but Kirk is coming off a season-ending injury himself. The Texans need depth. They need players that CJ Stroud can throw the ball to at various places around the field. It can't just be Nico Collins go deep and make it happen. Like, you need another guy or multiple guys, because they got Noel as well for Houston. So give me, I think this is good news for CJ Stroud. Yeah. Not so sure if this is good news for Higgins. I'm not convinced that his profile is like a winning profile. I have him projected for like a 12% target share. So it's a modest target share, but we could see 3, 4, or 5 touchdowns from Jaden Higgins this year.
Yeah, I like that. He's I thought he would have made sense as like a Mike Evans understudy, something like that. He's like a Kean Coleman type player. It's kind of a weird fit. Like you said, I think one of the keys here is what's Christian Kirk's status into week 1, because that's a sneaky good spot for him.
Right.
But like you said, it's good for Stroud. I'm not real crazy about the spot for Higgins, at least for this year.
Well, Noel is also there, and he's going to be a slot guy. And is Kirk going to play on the outside? Is he going to play on the inside? And that's going to, I think, determine which of these rookies are going to hit, or maybe hit harder.
I think a sneaky strong take might be that I could see Noel outperforming Higgins this year, but that's dependent on what Kirk's health status is.
Sure, for sure. Justin Watson also, there in Houston, just hanging out.
That's another guy. I can't wait for him to go away.
Giving high fives to people on the bench, just hey, how you doing? My name's Justin. All right, we'll shift from the Houston Texans and their wide receivers to the Bears. The Bears, they surprised some people by taking Loveland at 10, and then they came back in the second round and selected Luther Burden. Look, DJ Moore did sign an extension. Roma Dunze was drafted last year, but these are This is a new coaching staff. And the vibes I'm getting, Ryan, are that Randall L., the wide receivers coach for the Bears, loves Odunze. So they love Odunze. They love Burden because they drafted him. They love Loveland. Well, because if they didn't, his name would be Hateland. And Ryan hates the puns. It's okay. So the only player, and they could have replaced DeAndre Swift. They could have. They very well could have replaced him with any running. You got Kyle Manangi. I don't even know how to say his name. That's the only other running back that's the only running back that was taken in the draft by the Bears. And now you have Swift, Roschon Johnson, and a late round day 3 running back. You could have replaced Swift, but instead, Ryan, maybe I'm burying the lead here. DJ Moore might be the odd man out in this Chicago Bears room.
Yeah, for me, I'm not real crazy about Odunze. I think I've never seen even a slither of great in him. I can see him being the odd man out. It actually surprises me that Randall L. likes him. That said, the thing that I'll say about Burden is his skill set's similar to Randall Cobb, which is similar to Amon-Ra St. Brown's. I don't think it happens early, but if he had a late season surge, the other thing too with the Bears moves, it signals that they're not going to lean on the run. They're going to throw the living shit out of the ball. So
Caleb Williams,
it's Burden's. I think Burden has a pretty decent shot to peak late. So we'll see where he ends up going. But if he's a value at all, I'm going to probably dip into him more than I should.
I have Burden at 17% target share, 87 targets on the year, 55 receptions, 630 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I think that's a fair median projection to get us started at least. Caleb Williams is my quarterback 4, Ryan.
Is he really?
He is.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I love him. I'm not sure I'd have him at 4, but I love it. I will end up having an MVP bet on Caleb Williams, so maybe I will have him at 4. Well, I love it. I do.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Caleb Williams, quarterback 4. We're calling it now. A hair over Baker Mayfield. Just a sliver, just a touch. We mentioned that the Chargers drafted Amari and Hampton in the first round. They came back around in the second round and took wide receiver Trey Harris. Now, Harris crushed in the yards after the catch. He was a big downfield receiver. We love his physicality. But when it comes to like what is he going to do in year 1, there's a little bit of target competition for the Chargers, especially if they're not going to throw the ball a ton. Yes, like Herbert did increase over the course of the season. Like Harbaugh trusted him more. I think that's what was at stake here, because Harbaugh did not trust JJ McCarthy very much. And now he moves to LA and we see Herbert. We have Quentin Johnston there, who had a productive season last year. Ladd McConkey, Trey Harris. I have Harris at a 14% target share, 81 targets, 52 receptions, 806 receiving yards, 4.5 touchdowns. So, like right behind Quentin Johnston, but a distant third to Ladd McConkey.
Yeah, he's definitely not going to touch McConkey in volume. I think he's better than Quentin Johnston. I like him as a player, but I do think your median projection's fair. Like, if he had 100 targets this season, I think that would be exceeding expectations considerably. So I think that's kind of the ceiling you're looking at, unless McConkey goes down.
Yeah, so I'm interested in taking some best ball shots on Trey Harris. I think that's the more so the move. I don't think Harris is in rookie year going to be a player you're confident putting in as a flex or even as, a wide receiver 3 confidently in your lineup.
Yeah, I agree. And I like him and I agree.
All right, Ryan, maybe we need to fight about this one. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Well, we're going to find out when we enter the man versus machine ring over Colston Loveland, the tight end for the Bears. The reality is, I think this was the worst offensive pick in the first round.
I don't hate that. I think they have a good enough roster where they can do it, but they didn't need it. It's a bit of a reach. I think it was Ian Rappaport said something interesting where there were teams trying to trade in like up in the first round, like around 8, 9, 10. And then when Loveland went, the call stopped is something he said, which is pretty interesting. But yeah, I mean, good player, super crowded group of pass catchers. Yeah, it's taking a tight end at 10, like I'm not sure he belongs there, but we'll see. He I guess the long-term plan is he's Caleb Williams, Travis Kelce, which is obviously a extremely lofty expectation.
Yeah, this year it was a bad pick. For the future, maybe Cole Kmet has one more year on his deal, and then he becomes a free agent, or they can cut him at almost no cost. So that's within the range of outcomes. Cole Kmet, though, has been a consistent producer for the Bears over the last since he was drafted. Even with the 0 touchdown game or 0 touchdown season that he had a couple years ago, like he's been a good pass blocker. He's been a consistent receiver. He's been the guy, almost not quite peak Jason Witten, but just consistency. Like he's a consistent player. He's going to be a tight end 10, tight end 12 on the season. You know what you're going to get from Cole Kmet. But you don't know what's in the mystery box for Loveland. And I think the long-term mystery box and enchantment is what caught the Bears' eyes with Loveland.
Yeah, I think they would have been better off taking the edge the 49ers took with the pick later. And like you said, Cole Kmet's a good player. I definitely think Colston Loveland has a tough time this year, unless Kmet goes down. And even if he does, the target competition is just so heavy there. So yeah, for this year, I don't have a ton of enthusiasm for Loveland in fantasy.
What about Ty Warren? Because I had mocked Warren to the Colts, and where does he land, Ryan?
There's smoke and there's fire type deal. He's a really good player. If, say, George Kittle was going to retire instead of to get extended, I think it would have been wonderful if he went there. It would have been wonderful if he went to Miami and became their George Kittle. Him going to the Colts is, ugh. I actually feel bad for him, At least in the short term, I feel bad for him.
He might be the best quarterback on the roster, Ryan.
He might be the best passer. He's not your own dead at that.
Well, we got a couple other tight ends in the second round: Mason Taylor, Elijah Arroyo, and Terrence Ferguson. Yeah, evidently it is supposed to be pronounced Arroyo, like a yo-yo, only Arroyo. Mason Taylor goes to the Jets. Arroyo goes to Seattle. Ferguson goes to the Rams. If you were to pick one to have a best 2025 season, Ryan, who would this second round tight end be?
What a great way. I like Arroyo the most. I think Ferguson has the best shot, just landing spot in year one. So I like him the most this year.
I think so too. In terms of upside, I think Ferguson definitely has that. When you're in the McVay offense and Stafford is your quarterback, there's a kingmaker capability. And at any point, any of the players could become kings because that's what the Rams offense does. So Ferguson, definitely the upside. The interesting thing for Taylor, I'm not enamored with his talent. We talked about that last week. I think he's maybe just a little bit more than just a guy. But the opportunity is still massive in New York. Like outside, I was doing the projections, Ryan, and I'm trying to squeeze any juice I can into future pass catchers. Like, is it Alan Lazard as your wide receiver 2? Is it Tyler Johnson as your wide receiver 2 behind Garrett Wilson? Taylor has massive opportunity in the Jets in terms of target share possibility. Or is it that just Garrett Wilson gets 40% of the targets and we just leave it alone?
He may. I mean, that might be a team that's planning to run the ball 40 times a week, play defense. That might literally be the plan. So, but I like where your head's at. It makes sense.
All right. Well, those are the rookies. Ryan and I are very excited to see. There's going to be training camps coming up. The schedule is dropping here just in a couple weeks. And Ryan and I will bring you the goodness. Until next time, everyone, good luck in the fantasy football streets.